Hello and welcome back to another episode of Hawaiian Share Projects. In today's episode, we're going to be continuing working on the pocket knife build. What we will be doing is be making a brass spacer that'll hold the two halves of the pocket knife together, as well as we'll be working on a stop that'll go along with it to make sure that the blade doesn't come back on us. So if you want to see how I did that, make sure to stick around. So as you can see here in the picture, I've got the brass spacer for the two sides, as well as the stop for the blade to keep it from folding back on itself. Now the way that I went about making these is I just have a bar of 1/8 inch by 1 inch brass stock. I went ahead and colored it with some Sharpie, and I took a screw or just sharp object, and I traced the outline of the knife handle that I want to match it up to. Then I just took my bandsaw and I went ahead and roughly cut it out, and I do need to get a different bandsaw. It was a little bit difficult with my horizontal one, just kind of propping it up vertical like this. So make sure you try to get the correct tools for the job because it makes it go a heck of a lot smoother. As well as this blade was a little bit too thick for me to try to get them curves and turns into it very well. So in order for me to clean it up, I went ahead threw it in the vise, took my file, and just kind of roughed out or smoothed out some of those rough spots, try to get that curve going a little bit better. And this is where I got impatient. It was going a little bit too slow for me. So I went ahead and took it over the sander, and this is where I messed up. I sanded off too much, made it too thin for what I wanted. My drill holes wouldn't have lined up, and it just would have been a whole headache. So we tried a different idea. Taking my scrap brass I had left, vice grip in my vise, and went ahead and marked the holes that I'm going to be putting my rivets in. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it over to my drill press, and I'm going to drill those holes out. That way I could put a piece of my rivet stock, which is also brass, in the handle as well as through the brass section here. And that'll help me slowly be able to sand everything down to the size that I need on the outside as well as on the inside of the pocket knife. And it just made it a heck of a lot easier having a guide. So as you can see there, I'm just going to go ahead, now I got those pins in place, I'm just going to sand it down to the outside of the pocket knife handle and just kind of get everything nice and cleaned up and smooth there. Now the really nice thing about doing it this way is because the handle itself is a lot harder of a metal than the brass is, and so I'm going to be sanding on it very little amount, and taking a good bit amount of brass away comparatively. So it's going to act as my guide. I'm not too worried about taking too much off the handle. I made it big for a reason. That way when I finish it all up, I could refine it and close everything back together. But it acts as a really good guide. Now unfortunately I haven't been able to put videos out in the past couple weeks. It's been the holidays and it's been very cold. As you can see here, I've got my forge going as well as a little heater because it is snowing inside of my forge. So trying to get a little bit of heat. But here I go again, back to the sander. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to get everything kind of close to the size that I need. And then I'll use the paper trick with the outline of what I actually want, the glue stick, and on top of it to act as a guide to make sure that I don't sand too much of it off again. Here we are, I got the paper glued on as my guide, and we're just going to sand down to the paper, leaving a little bit of extra brass on there to make sure that I don't take it too small. We could always refine this and clean it up and bring it in a little bit closer later on. Now see, here's an example of why I need that little spacer, that stopper. Is because that blade folds back. And so what I did is I just took a scrap piece of the brass that I had. I went ahead and did the same technique of drilling the hole for the rivet. That way I could put it in place. Did kind of an outline, and I took and sanded everything down. This time I did a lot on the file because it's a very small piece. The sander kept yanking it out of my hands. But you see, it locks the blade back to where it holds it steady. It's not going to fold back on myself and become an issue, and it still closes. So there you have it, the finished result for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Stay classy, party on.